Tonight's presidential debate started off by spending an inordinate amount of time talking about what the candidates considered to be the disasters of the Iraq and Afghanistan wars. I do think they stated their case as well, and I have to admit, I don't think George Bush has any chance at all of being reelected. During the closing statements in tonight's Democratic debate, Tom Steyer said that the American people are his teammates, and he won't allow anyone to kick his teammates in the face, clearly sensing a clear and present danger from Jean-Claude Van Damme. And finally, Bernie Sanders reportedly told Elizabeth Warren in a private meeting in 2018 that a woman can't be elected president. He later apologized, explaining what he really meant is that she can't be elected president. The Trump Report starts now.
I'm Maria Menounos, and you're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Yes, late night here at AfterBuzz TV for a special post-debate, post-debate, little wrap-up show here on the Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt, joined by Chelsea Galicia.
Hello there.
Tamra Brown.
Hi there.
And of course, the Scott Moore making his first appearance of 2020.
Yes.
Now, to be fair, we've only had one show previously in 2020, so you really, you only missed one. But still, your first appearance for 2020.
True.
A lot to focus on, and I like to always start off with focusing on the big issue, what was really important, and who here on the panel knew that 1990 was 30 years ago, because I'm not raising my hand. I did not.
10 years ago to me.
I had no idea.
10 years ago.
We learned so much from these debates.
It's true that when he said 1990, she's like, yeah, 30 years ago, I was like,
He's like, 1990.
my wires
I was
in my
wearing
brain
MC Hammer pants.
Yeah.
I
feel like I've
to
mentioned
quit.
that. I said to a friend the other day, somebody born in 1990 is 30 years old this year.
Yeah.
I think I'm set on it. I think I've accepted it.
Oof.
No, I
I'm not
haven't.
there yet.
No,
not yet. Either.
And clearly Bernie can't accept it, and I don't blame him, by the way. So there was a lot of back and forth about that, and then looking at before the debate, and for some reason I thought there were only going to be 5, and then I was like, wait a minute, who's here that I didn't expect?
What was it? Who was the last minute
Steyer?
Was it Steyer?
Steyer?
Did he just buy his way on?
I think when you said it was 5, that's how many. And
last week it was 5.
Somebody just came on all of a sudden.
So I looked at the collection of people on the stage, and I'm like, okay, well, why are Amy Klobuchar and Tom Steyer here? But then it's like, wait, aren't they polling higher than Mayor Pete? Like, he's got like 7%. I know it depends on what poll you're looking at. And in the Iowa poll, he's doing better. So I think that's why he's certainly hanging in. But I don't know how he qualified. I mean, that just tells you that Andrew Yang should have started giving out those $1,000 to people like during the primaries, now, before the primaries. Because I think he'd be polling higher if I had $1,000 from him. I would feel obligated. I think it would be rude to not vote for him.
So
And I don't need it every month.
more money in politics is what Christian's voting for.
No. This is money coming out of politics, going to me. So
a different concept than the one that I suggest when I talk about money.
That's money going into politics. I like the idea of taking money out of politics and putting it into...
literally taking it out and putting it in your pocket.
I want all of you to get $1,000 as well. I'm not going to share my $1,000, but I want each of you to get your own individual $1,000.
Yes. I actually, that's the concept of getting money out of politics so that the people can get more of the benefit of having a government.
So I guess I'm in the Yang gang, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
So
a little late to the party.
Well, I mean, he wasn't there tonight, but that's all right. I saw that he threw a party of his own, so that's more fun, right?
Where he gave out $1,000 to everybody that was there.
Oh man, don't even tell me that. How did I not get on that list? So what I actually like to do is try and figure out, okay, did anybody at the end of the debate come off where you're like, oh, I feel like they're in a worse spot than they were going in?
Yeah, CNN.
Wow, because I didn't feel that way for any of the candidates. So for CNN, you felt that way. Specifically, why?
These have been the same questions, phrased in much the same way, I think, as the previous 6 debates. This should have been the question about, on the issue of health care, besides Medicare for all, what do you think we can do to improve the health of Americans? Besides the USMCA, what is there about trade that people should know about what your administration plans to do?
But let me play devil's advocate for a second, because that's actually why I'm here. Would it be easier to ask new questions about healthcare if the candidates who don't want to say how much it's going to cost would say how much it costs? And it's
Oh
not
my God,
like,
he did.
Wait, he did.
Well,
no, the only person who said it was going to cost was Mayor Pete,
No,
who said
he
it was going to be
said
1.5
He
trillion.
said, so
4%.
Bernie specifically said, if you're making $60,000, you would pay in $1,200 instead of $12,000, which you're paying right now. And then immediately Biden said that the numbers wouldn't add up. That's not how it would work out. And then almost every single candidate said the phrase, the numbers don't add up. So I wish that it's too late now, but like we should be doing these debates. I would love it if instead of as many, what is this, this is the fourth debate?
This is
No, it's like the
seventh.
Is it the sixth?
6 or 7.
Yeah,
Seven.
See?
it's been going on since the summer.
7.
We should have rather than break the debates up by candidates, I wish that they had been broken up by subject,
I mean,
so that we're
CNN's
talking
done
about these
town
3
halls.
topics.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true too. I mean, they've had the town halls. Break them up by topics, so because we need to spend more time on things like healthcare, and I would really love there to be a fact checker or somebody who's some sort of
I'll tell you
industry
why that they'll
industry
say
insider.
the numbers don't add up
So
and why.
just so that when each person is saying your plan won't work, mine will, your plan won't work, somebody there to be, because only because as somebody who's watching it, I don't like. Nobody's swaying me one way or the other. It seems like a pointless argument because as long as this person's saying your numbers don't add up, mine do, I don't know the difference. So what's the purpose of that whole interaction?
Yeah, I think that they're shooting themselves in the foot because they make the entire, panel of candidates look weak on the issue that they don't know what they're talking about. The reason why some say the numbers don't add up, or yes they do, is because of what they're including in their number. So it's easy to make a number sound small. I think Buttigieg is like 1.5 billion or something. He said, which is not small, but it's not as big as like. But what are you including in healthcare? Does it include a lot of the things that mental health, dental, that aren't some of the things which are not currently included? So I think that the reason this is so hard to nail down is because we don't exactly know what the cost of healthcare is going to be, because on the whole, we're getting unhealthier and unhealthier. We're getting more numerous and the population's growing all the time. So
The silver wave is coming.
So we can't
That's what they call the
exactly
boomers.
nail it down, which is why I wish instead
Okay,
of just
boomer.
Medicare for all, that we would actually talk about what are the other things that we should be doing to make people healthier and therefore bring down the cost of healthcare, no matter who's paying for it, whether we're paying for it ourselves, our employers are paying for it, or the government's paying for it. But yeah.
Well, I think that the question usually is, and look at this
Wow.
wonderful artistic rendering. I didn't know that there was a court stenographer. But does that really look like Tom Steyer to anyone, by the way? That yeah, all right. I guess that's
Crossed with Ken.
You know what that looks like? That looks like Tom
Ken doll?
Steyer in 1990. But that's just I guess.
Which was 10 years ago.
Right, exactly. Thank you, Scott. So I don't know. I guess a lot of the questions will stem from how much is it going to cost the government,
But what other issue in any debate, Democratic or Republican, has that been the thing that people have had to answer? How much is that going to cost? How many times have we talked about foreign policy and going into a country doing that, where the question was brought up? Oh wait, I want to know the budget for this first.
I mean, I would like to.
That would be fair enough. If we were to bring it up for every subject, fine. But why is it that it's this one, the one about helping Americans?
It would be great if in somebody's coverage, this is not about debates, of State of the Union address, regardless of who the president is, you just have a little tally down there that everything that they promise, you just add up what it's going to cost. And it might take a little while, but then you just have a running total. You know how you used to have the debt clock in Times Square. I just want to know how much it's, because when it gets to the point, and it's at some point in the debate they said that Trump has spent trillions of dollars. When you get to that level, it's it becomes imaginary. It doesn't seem like real money anymore.
Exactly.
When you're oh, it's $50 billion. Okay, that is kind of cartoony. But then when you get to the multiple trillions, you're is that even really a number? You know, who's seen $1 trillion here?
Not I.
Right, it's not something that people can grasp because it's something that's such a large number.
I know Moneybags Brown over there has seen $1 trillion, you know, but
boy.
the rest of us have not.
Don't I wish I had seen
Don't you wish that was your nickname?
$10,000?
I mean, like, if we try and think of it, I mean, what amount of, like, let's say, real estate in downtown Los Angeles? Like, how many of those buildings would you have to put together to get to $1 trillion? And that might be a way to make it more tangible for people. But I don't know.
People don't even understand. I mean, such a big problem with the wealth gap is because people don't understand how wealthy the 1% actually
It's
is.
like we're all here, and then it's like, vroom!
Yeah,
It's
you,
like
you
just-
think
you
that the
can't-
wealthiest Americans are here, but they're through like
Yeah.
through
No, there's
three
no
times
there's
as tall.
no
Through the
chart.
lighting.
Yeah.
There's no chart that can show the poorest Americans and the wealthiest Americans on the same chart. You know, I mean, it's not big, at least not a printed one. You know, you can't fit it on the same.
So we
That
need
would
to
be-
find
somebody
some
should have
other.
brought that to the debate. Something like that took up like the whole ceiling, like then like
Yeah,
this is the
visual
disparity.
aids.
it
Visual
would've been
aids
good.
would
Yes.
have really made
Yes.
a difference.
We've solved the
Or
problem.
5 Empire State Buildings stacked on top of each other.
So what
Like,
I'm
you know.
saying is, I think Carrot Top should join the presidential race.
I mean, you know, look, Mike Bloomberg got in, and he's like in 3rd place now. He's not even in debates, but he's buying a lot of
why
commercials.
was Steyer in and not Bloomberg?
Apparently made the threshold,
With
which was
the
the
individual-
polls.
He had
Yeah,
more
the-
time, right? I mean, more
Yeah,
time
he had
to-
the polls, but I still think he had enough donors too, which is the other thing.
But
that you
are
have
all
to
the
get.
donors himself? Like
Probably.
his Tim Steyer and Jim Steyer, and I don't know.
Yeah.
All right, so one of my favorite things that happened early in the debate was how Wolf Blitzer kept saying, we're going to get to everyone, but I'm going to ask the same 3 people questions. And I know that, like, legitimately they ask more questions to the people who are polling the highest. I just thought it was fun. It's like, don't like pander
Don't pretend to
don't
be
pretend that
equal.
you're going to get to everyone on all these issues, you know.
I mean, but we certainly heard from them more than in all the other debates.
Yeah.
when there was,
well,
like,
because we had
20
half as many people.
Right.
I have to say, if you ask me who stood out in this race, I like Steyer.
Yeah?
Yeah, he really. I'm not saying that like he's my guy now, or I'm gonna be, I'm on Team Steyer. I'm just saying that, like, to me, who really garnered my attention, he really did. He seemed likable, and I tweeted this. I feel 100% that his goal in this debate was he was stumping to be somebody's VP.
I saw you. I actually saw you tweet that, and I agree. I think
I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah,
you follow Tamra. on
I
Twitter?
do.
Because
Okay.
as many times as he said, Elizabeth had a good point, and look
Yeah.
what Elizabeth and Klobuchar does, and Pete's the only one here who did this, and then that whole team, the thing about my teammates at the end. Yes, he was talking about America, but there were certain parts of it where he was making it sound like this is my team.
Yeah.
And so I totally feel like he was, and he was super likable. I liked so much of what he said. When he was asked about being is he a millionaire or billionaire? I suppose he's a billionaire, right?
1.6
Billionaire.
Well, he's a
Yeah.
billionaire, and that's why you like him, because you
who
billionaires stick together.
who invested in oil.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, I did, but because I invested in everything that was profitable, but I got out 10 years ago because I realized that his
Yeah.
answer to it, I really appreciated.
No, he got out 10 years ago in 1990, so
Right.
it makes sense.
Right.
No, I did like that because,
And-
look, a lot of people can answer that differently.
Yeah.
They can, they don't have to be as forthcoming,
Yeah, and I liked when they said, do your kids deserve, are they entitled to public education? And he just said, no. I don't know, I thought he was clean and clear. And
I think his best line was when they were going back and forth between the Medicare and whose numbers do and don't add up. And then he kind of simmered everybody down and said, this is not a complicated problem. I'm reading from my notes, so they may or may not be correct. But spending too much because corporations own the system. That I was like, yes. We've given tax cuts to the richest Americans and biggest corporations for decades. They are having their way. This is cruelty for money. And then that's why I'm for term limits. I'm like, oh man, you should have quit while you were ahead. Not that I disagree with
Right.
I was
term
going to
limits.
say,
Right,
wait
but
a
it's
minute,
a
we
separate-
like term limits.
It's a separate
But
discussion.
it was
but
like,
yes,
I
yeah.
appreciate it, but it should have stopped there. It just was a poor call on where to stop.
No,
with
we
this.
hadn't heard him talk anywhere near this much. And
Right.
I think, sometimes when you get to talk more, it's not necessarily a good thing. But I thought that, look, he made good points, and he has been very upfront that, climate change is the thing that's most important to him. And I think he went to the well a couple of times about but none of you think it's as important as I do.
Yeah, but here's what I don't get. He understands, he talks about all the time about how corporations have got us sort of in this stranglehold. And then he says the biggest thing is climate change. You have to kind of pick one horse as your primary horse. When he splits himself this way, it weakens like what his brand is. I think we've got to clean up the money in politics so that we can clean up the climate and everything else. But when he splits himself and then says, and I'm the best on the economy, then he washes himself out in the sea of camp.
As I was saying, I wish that they would break debates up by topic. Another reason for that is because there's a phrase being used a lot now called compassion fatigue, and it's like people are getting exhausted by having to care about 40 issues all at once. And
we should care about one: corruption, democracy,
and
which
not
is
to,
other side of the
and
same
not
coin.
to say that you should lack compassion, but it's just so it's damaging to people's mental health and their anxiety levels right now when you are constantly bombarded with what's more important, this, or this.
Which is why if they would all coalesce on to say, if we deal with this one primary issue, we got to attack it from several angles, here it is, then this is all the things that we could affect and
I think
change.
Bernie was very good at that. He would usually always circle back to getting corporations, responsibility.
Yeah. But the way that he goes after it is like it's corporate greed, I think is limiting in terms of the number of people who are going to go along with that, because a lot of people think they like corporations. The big corporations are the ones that they know and that they shop at, and so that they feel maybe a little insulted that like you're attacking something that I believe in or that I work for or that is very American. And instead of the greed, because it's not quite greed. Like, I don't know, is a sociopath greedy? They don't even have the consciousness for greed. So, right, they're not, I don't think that they're greedy. That's just how a sociopath operates without a conscience.
Yeah.
And so it's not the people of the corporations, it is the rules, the set of rules that we have given corporations to run by. That is what has them behave this way. So it is a systemic problem, not a people greed problem, and I think it limits the number of people who will be passionate about Bernie's attack on corporations.
Well, and I also think a lot of people want to be able to think of themselves as having an opportunity to be wealthy or rich. It kind of goes into the American dream. So a lot of people, that's why they kind of looked at Donald Trump a lot and thought, oh, okay, well, here's this self-made. Of course, it's not true, but they see that person coming in, they see someone who's wealthy, and they think, oh, great, I have an opportunity to do that too. I don't, I want to be able to have the same opportunities everyone else does, and companies can provide that and a way to move up and a way to make money. And so I think when people say that, it kind of goes back to the 80s and, greed is good and that kind of thing, where people want to feel that they have that opportunity to have it too, and it's not, out of their reach. And by making it into a negative too, I think that has a lot of people.
So you're saying the people can really grasp onto Steyer. That's what I feel like.
I think if you were people understand what a sociopath is, right? And I think if corporations are literally sociopaths. That's how we create them out of thin air, paper, to operate in our lives and kind of control our country, and they have no conscience. I don't know who's with me.
Well, it goes back to Jennifer Government. That's a great book, and it has that post-apocalyptic thing where it is basically like all these multinational corporations are basically running the planet. They are the government and everything else. And I've seen that in certain things, like even going back to Disney in Central Florida. They have their own sort of government in parts of these areas where Disney World is. And, you can kind of see that where money plays a role, and all of a sudden now money is giving power to certain corporations. And so it does go back to what I think a lot of the debate did touch on today, and that is that there is too much power right now in the corporations. Is it necessary? Like you said, greed is not necessarily the way to frame it. It's a power thing. It's what you said. It's the structure that we have allowed. It's the Citizens United. It's all these other things that have happened that have given this power to these corporations, like anything else, and now they have too much of it, and that starts to affect everyday life.
That would fix the fatigue problem, because if we can just focus on one thing, maybe we wouldn't feel like we're spreading ourselves in 40 different directions.
Earlier, Chelsea, you said that you thought, CNN was the big loser. And I thought it was in reference to what they were clearly waiting to pounce on was the, what I mentioned at the top of the show, this comment that Bernie says he didn't make. And I guess the moderator, Abby Phillips, just immediately, I thought it was an interesting moment where he's like, so I didn't say it. And immediately she says, so when he said it, Senator Warren, when he said it was like, all you have to say is like, when you claim he said it, or,
that was
but it was just
harsh.
like, it was just like, oh, clearly I believe Elizabeth Warren because she's Elizabeth Warren. And she's, Elizabeth Warren played it really well because she's like, no, I know what you're trying to do. You're trying to get your little moment where, she still addressed the issue without really taking the bait to that extent. But that surprised me. And I have to admit that I don't know Abby Phillips. I had never seen her before.
Yeah.
So I didn't, is that something that you should have seen coming from her?
Well, but in the progressive commentary that I have seen, this has been that this is either mainstream media or establishing Democrats trying to have progressives tear each other down.
Right.
And so if you believe that, and CNN is sort of mainstream media, then that would play into the narrative that CNN wants to destroy the progressive wing of the Democratic Party by having them fight against each other.
Right.
So that's one way to do it, is just throw a grenade into the center of it. But I liked how they both kept a clamp on it, and they both directed it in other directions. And it was interesting that Bernie disclosed that before he ran for president last time around, that he met with Elizabeth Warren to make sure she really wasn't running, because there were people that wanted her to run.
Right.
And only when she said she wasn't going to run that he made the decision to go forward. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that shows that behind the scenes they really are, allies and compadres, and that this has been sort of, made much ado about nothing. I can say, and I think anybody in a long-term serious relationship has had a conversation where you swear you didn't say something and the other person swears that you did, and both people, like in their hearts of hearts, believe that they are telling the truth about their position. I don't know. That's just me.
Well, and also it could have just been conversationally, just like, maybe not even like a woman won't. It could have been like, I don't think a woman's going to.
Or Trump is going to tear down a woman, or something to that effect.
It just could have been something. That's what I'm saying. It could have been something like that, where technically, yes, he said it, but he didn't say the words.
What he meant. As a woman, I do not care whether he said it or not.
Yeah.
I don't care. Does anybody, do we have people in the chat room? Does anybody care? Or does any women care that he said that? If he said that, which I don't even know if he did.
I mean, it wouldn't make all that much sense. I mean, to say that a woman would have a hard time because he would be nasty and vicious and cruel to them the way he was to Hillary would be accurate.
What you mean? Stalking around on the stage and just standing behind her.
I wonder if there's going to be
new
rules about that. Like you must
stay
within like 2 feet of
There's
your
like
podium.
your box of where you have to be around.
Right, and you will get a technical foul if you step out of it.
It's like the old, it's the sitcom thing, but it's from the old movie It Happened One Night, where you like draw a line down the middle of the room, and like you can't go across this line.
It's like the
you put
piece of tape.
Put an actual piece of tape. And
then I imagine him going to the end of the line and then being like, "What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do?"
Pick up the tape and just move it a little closer.
Yeah, that's another thing. Yeah. But he would be so like, "What? I'm just gonna stick my toe. What? What do you? What does it matter? What are you gonna do to me?" I can so see him playing it like the way a 4 or 5-year-old would try and like push the boundaries of what they can get away with and be really obnoxious and annoying. I hope we don't have to deal with that. But
probably, I think the issue isn't so much like can a woman win, but I guess the question is, these 2 women who are now left, how would they measure up against Trump? I mean, obviously...
That was a really good point that Elizabeth Warren said the only ones who have won against Republican other candidates are the two
in the
women
last 30
on
years.
stage. Yeah.
Well,
That was a good way to play it.
But they've never run in a primary for president before. So, you know, I mean, it's just like...
We're going to find out very shortly about Amy Klobuchar, because if she does not finish in the top 2...
I would say
maybe
3.
Well-
Even if she came in 3rd place in Iowa, she's got
in
to...
Iowa, but then in New Hampshire, she'd have
Right.
to be, you know,
Yes.
somewhere around there, I would say.
But taking it back just a minute, I think that Elizabeth Warren did a great job of kind of threading the needle with that response. Like, basically what you're saying, Christian, she didn't allow herself to fall for it, because in a way, it's also politically expedient for her as well, because Bernie and her are closest in that progressive wing that need each other's support if one were to drop out. So it makes it more difficult, not saying it would be right or wrong, but it makes it more difficult for her to blatantly go after him and attack him when they're both kind of symbiotic in the sense that they kind of need each other right now, and whoever leaves, they need their support. Yes, so they have to. They had to kind of be very difficult with that, and I think CNN was trying to go after that too.
I've said this before, and I totally believe that Elizabeth Warren is a strong candidate on her own, but she is helped by the fact that Bernie is even more to the left of her, because it makes her seem like a slightly more moderate choice. She's not the most extreme.
But she's like that number 2 or number 1. You know, they're kind of on each other's short list there for voters right now. So
They're the two head cheerleaders.
They need each other right now. So she did a very good job of not playing into the question and allowing it to become more of a negative issue than it needed to be, because she really also still needs those Bernie supporters too, were he to not do as well and drop out at some point down the line.
And to Tamra's point, yes, they're Will Ferrell and Sherry O'Terry, the cheerleaders from SNL. Let me get in a couple of comments from the chat.
Reference from 1990.
Yeah. 96.
I know.
Thank you very much. The Demon Knot. I agree with Chelsea. It might be miscommunication. Doesn't really matter. And R. Scott Brown says... Warren didn't shake Bernie's hand at the end. I didn't see that.
Yeah,
Looked like she was scolding him. Tom Steyer was watching them, waiting for his handshake, and it looked awkward AF, which I assume means Abercrombie and Fitch. I mean...
I heard about that.
I saw it, but...
I didn't see it because I finally got to take the nap that I'd been putting off for 2 hours while I was listening.
I think probably she was peeved by his insistence on saying, no, you're wrong. I beat a Republican incumbent. And then she had to say, no, I'm not wrong. I said in the last 30 years, you know, I think that's probably what she was
Scott and I
peeved
were
by.
burning on this.
Well,
just 1990 could not have possibly been 30 years ago.
I think
so she's wrong.
Actually, in my mind, it's still 2019, so it was only 29 years ago at best.
Well,
I think Bernie missed the 30 years ago part, because I did too. I think he thought she said has never...
In general.
Yeah. And then instead of just being like, oh, I misheard you,
Yeah,
he
Elizabeth's like, I'm trying to get us both out of this as cleanly and nicely as possible, and you got to like.
He did keep it going. I mean, look, again, I did see it at the end, and I felt like it's also now something to throw in to add to this whole thing, going back to the question of like, oh, look at them fighting and they hate each other, and you know that we're getting
progressives
too,
will not fall
we're getting,
for this.
Yeah, we're getting too involved in that.
Start to choose one or the other, and I will, you know, the Bernie followers are never Warren, and vice versa. Like, if we let that happen, they have won, and we have.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It got silly. And
on that note, my opinion, the best line of the night is when Bernie said, whoever gets the nom, and I hope that it's me, but whoever gets the nom, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that person won. I think that was...
I did like the moment between Bernie and Biden, where Biden was speaking about the supreme leader of Iran, who said that he should be like beaten with a stick, like a dog or whatever, and so Bernie chimed in and was like, but other than that, you like him. So I was just like, all right, well, that was a nice moment of levity.
I kept the tally of those chuckle moments.
Right, even they are like, how many of these things are we got to do? Let's, we're basically saying the same things because we're usually being asked the same questions. And you could make the point when it was different outlets and different moderators. Well, I don't know. I think only Wolf Blitzer's been on before. Like, the woman from the Des Moines Register, I certainly hadn't seen her before. Right. But to the point is, it's just like they're just there like, all right, I mean, we've kept doing this. This is the last one. People are going to find, the last one before people vote. Obviously, we get more. So, I don't know. It seemed like they had as much fun as you can in that setting.
But I think Bernie getting in those chuckle moments
Yeah.
was more helpful to him than probably half the answers he gave, but I think he gave all very good answers. Something to counterbalance this idea of he is just this kind of, I don't know, annoyed, serious.
Curmudgeonly old
Oh,
man.
I didn't mean that was the
Yeah.
best line as the funny, like a chuckle line. I meant I just thought that was my favorite thing that was said, as far as I'm going to support any of these candidates, no matter who gets the nom.
Well, there's a lot of people that are still upset with him because they think that he did too much damage to Hillary Clinton, and that's why she didn't win by a bigger margin.
Yes, because Bernie told her not to go to Wisconsin. That was definitely, his
And
advice.
that's the
Well, It's really a joke.
But I think in this last
Christian's surprised
we're gonna
Hillary
talk-
wasn't in the debate tonight. Christian still thinks she's
oh
There's
god.
still time.
she's still polishing her.
There's still plenty of time.
Yeah, there's
Christian thinks she's still polishing her
Look, my-
tap shoes.
She's finding an escalator to
Mike
Yeah.
Bloomberg is, Mike Bloomberg is polling third, and he got in like a month ago. And he's spending all of his money on commercials.
Right,
Better,
I see
not
them.
good.
I know
I see
that's
them
what
all
I'm saying.
the
I see them
time.
all the time. So there is something to that. If you've got a gazillion dollars and you just want to start throwing it around everywhere, but
$56 billion.
Yeah.
Pretty close, something like that, right? Close. It
Yeah.
makes Tom Steyer look like a little
look
little
poor.
chump.
Yeah.
it's insane. It really is. Those type of numbers.
This debate needed to be an emotional appeal. At this point, we have heard these same
Yep.
answers 17,000 times. And there needed to be an appeal to the emotions. I don't think voters like to think of themselves as emotional decision makers, but we absolutely are. Who makes us feel seen? Who makes us feel heard? Who makes us feel safe? Who makes us feel that we've got an ally? And I think Trump makes some people feel like he's the bully on their side, which is why I think Steyer's closing statement was about we are a team and I don't let people kick my teammates in the face. He was trying to play on the same mind frame that Trump voters have, which is this guy is the bully that sticks up for me and doesn't let people kick me around. So I think that was strategic. I don't think the way he phrased it was emotionally compelling, but I think that that's what he's going for. And I think that the only one who had a good emotionally night that I can see is Elizabeth Warren. I was thinking by this point maybe Amy Klobuchar would be a little bit better and more at ease.
I think she attempted with every time anybody brought up an example of so and so that I met at this place. When Klobuchar was talking about the factory and the uniforms that still had the embroidered names on them, and he said that those were my friends and they've been fired. I think those were the attempts at emotion.
Yes. And it was very quick. But and even though in this debate she seemed more at ease, she seemed still to me to be very nervous.
Yeah.
She seems to me the way that I feel all the time, trying to remember to get my words straight and put words together in a coherent way. But I don't think that makes people feel safe and assured that they are supremely confident. And it's, I think, an unfortunate thing that we pick leaders based on how they appear so much. But how they appear is how safe we feel with them. And if she is so nervous and not seeming in control and I got this and really charismatic, see, for me that's the problem with Pete Buttigieg. He is a replica of Obama.
Yeah.
We all swooned and fell in love with him. And then the progressives
charismatic.
were very disappointed.
I mean, I was a John Edwards guy, but whatever. The rest of you.
I was a John Edwards guy a long time ago.
I would actually say that I don't feel that way with Pete Buttigieg that I did with Obama, and I think that's part of my thing is that and most people have not paid attention to the debate, so for a lot of people this is maybe the first time they're watching them now because now it's 2020 and people are actually voting at the end of the month. So for most of us that have watched it, we're like, yes, we're feeling like we're seeing a rerun again. And I thought nobody really changed opinions tonight if you've seen them for multiple times now. Maybe if it's the first time watching, maybe some people that have been backing Biden for most of it, except for his closing statement, which I thought was good. But for most of it, they're going to be like, okay, maybe I won't vote for him anymore.
Blubbering. He didn't.
But that's what I'm saying.
I was
maybe
blah.
People that are just tuning in may not now. He may not be their first choice anymore, like he had been for so long. But I don't feel the passion from any of those people in the sense that I did with President Obama, in the sense that I'm not feeling it. Everyone feels like they're still being too safe. Nobody was really being aggressive enough, and that really, again, goes back to Trump just doesn't care, blows everything up, says whatever he wants with no repercussions, and I still felt like each of these candidates was still playing it too safe, and I wasn't feeling particularly drawn to anyone. I'd be like, I cannot wait to vote for them.
Yeah.
Yes, I want to vote against Trump, but I'm not seeing anyone still, even after tonight, that I'm like, now I feel I really want to vote for them. I don't think anybody was going to be moved that might have been voting for someone except, like I said, Biden if they're first tuning in. But everyone else that had their person, I don't think they did anything to really change anything on any
Do you
individual
think the
minds
fact
in the
that
big scheme.
so many people feel that have the sentiment of literally anybody else, that is what is hurting the candidates, and that everybody is so, like, even moderates are so eager to just have literally anybody else in this position that everybody's sort of just kind of like, yeah, whoever, like, just like it's sort of what's the word? Let's like diluting enthusiasm. Like our
point,
ability to be enthusiastic about one person is diluted just because we're so desperate just to have any of them.
At this point, it's the candidates have to themselves create their own energy and really motivated bases. And I think based on the numbers, both money-wise and poll-wise, Elizabeth and Bernie are the ones doing that the best. And I think that will be even louder and better as one of them hopefully secures the nomination. And then I'm hoping that a new level of energy will be released. I don't remember how Obama was in the primaries. Do you?
In 2008?
Yes.
Yes.
I actually attended at the what's it called now, the Dolby Theater. I attended a debate between Obama and Hillary, and I was like, people talk about Obama, but I was completely unimpressed. I was underwhelmed by everything he said, and I was like, oh yeah, Hillary really, she's got this. Because it just made sense, But
in 2008?
In 2008. I mean, seeing him on television later and stuff, sure. But being in the room, I was just like, okay, yeah, I don't see what it is. But, and I don't know. I mean, I think that it was there, clearly.
Yeah, I mean, I voted for Hillary in the primary here in California at that point because it was early again, like it is going to be this year.
It was very early.
I think it was in February, actually. But I liked him and I was excited for him, but I was also like, oh, I don't know, can he actually win? You start getting scared because he's so inexperienced, and I think that in my head, and I think a lot of voters do that too. It goes back to why I think Biden's number one too. Is like, oh, they just think he is the one to win, even though they're not feeling passionate about him at the point. They're like, oh, well, he can win, and so I think that was kind of like with me with Hillary in 2008 was like, oh, well, I think she can win. She's sort of that,
Isn't this the lesson of Trump? Is that anybody could win just based on how they make voters feel.
Right, and that's what I was saying earlier. Is it kind of goes back to and you were saying it goes the feeling, but that's what's going to draw people in. Is like, are they feeling good about are they going to be passionate about voting for that person? It's going to take more than voting just against Trump. It's like, who is that person you're voting for?
I would say the lesson is that anyone can win except Bill de Blasio. I mean, I think that is definitely the big takeaway.
Oh, one thing that was really funny to me is the very first question was, why are you the most qualified person for the job? And two people mentioned Barbara Lee. And it just made me feel like, so where's Barbara Lee? Where's she? Let's put her, where's she
She
then?
was the one to not vote for the war.
For the wars, yeah.
Right.
And Elizabeth Warren was the only one who gave an impressive answer, and it was actually because she took the words right out of my mouth. I was like, who is the one talking about like judgment and your ability to make quick decisions? Going straight for the Iraq War as your resume on commander-in-chief is okay. We're not going to have that exact same situation again. If you told me exactly why and how you arrived at that and how that judgment will translate over to the next time that something happens, okay, fine. And he kind of did that when he said, well, who was it? Cheney and
Bush and Rumsfeld.
Right. They all came in and they try and sell us on, whatever, and I didn't believe them. Okay, so his ability to discern liars and truth tellers and people motivated by something other than the safety of Americans, he's good at distinguishing that. Does that make him the prime candidate for commander-in-chief? That by itself, I don't think so, but it actually is pretty high up there that he's not going to just follow along with the passionate moneyed interests that would have us go into to conflict. So, yeah, that helps. But when you tell me the whole, I was the only one in Iraq, it was just like, come the F on. And so when Warren was like, it's about judgment, it's about character, it's about your ability to make calls, I was like, yes, thank you, finally. And I think that actually made me feel better about her as a rolling commander-in-chief, because I don't hear her talk about that often.
Yeah, I didn't know
all.
she was on the arms committee when she talked about her being on the committee with the military. I thought that showed a lot of authority.
Oh,
But
yeah.
it just shows also
on that
we're
specific topic.
not clearly they're not focusing on the right thing in these debates. But if we're in like 6 debates in, and I didn't know that about her either. You know, let me just get to the chat. R. Scott Brown, Tamra, you have a good point. I too think people are getting bored, maybe apathetic towards the nomination, as they are more interested in the general election. More importantly, the demon nut. I am there with Christian. Hillary is the nominee. Crazy take, I know. Not so crazy.
No, I've been saying that
so
too. I
crazy.
said I would not doubt it
God.
at
You
all.
think she's coming in
I
too?
do. I've said it from the beginning with
what?
him. I said I could.
No way.
I will never put.
Yeah.
No, I'm just saying because this is something she's wanted her entire life since she was a little girl. That she's going to keep going at it if she can. I'm not saying she would. She's 100% going in, but this is what she wants.
You wouldn't be surprised.
I would not be
Yeah.
surprised. 'Cause I know this is what she wants. If she thinks she can go in and she can win against everyone else, she's going to do it again.
Oy.
Yeah.
I do want to give Joe Biden credit, by the way. This debate, it was a full 90 seconds before he mentioned Barack Obama. So I think that shows some personal growth. He seemed to talk less. Either
Yeah.
that or like he actually had his words.
Oh, I thought it
you
was
know,
emotional when he said I was a single dad, and he mentioned when his wife, and he said it so quickly to not pull at your heartstrings with it, but just to it was appropriate for that time.
Except
I
his
felt that.
$42,000, I was like, that's actually really good money back then. He made it seem like it was like, I'm like, that's pretty decent now.
And then
I'll
he's
take
like,
it now.
and I had to drive 500 miles.
Yeah,
Wait, no,
250.
250. I was like,
I had to drive 5,000 miles. Well, he took a train because.
Yes.
But
his
here's
whole
the
thing is he
thing:
loves
in
trains.
these debates, we hear about childcare. We heard about that in the Trump administration. Where is that now in the conversation? So it's like these debates and these plans that everybody comes up with are a little bit silly. I'm channeling a little bit of Marianne right now, and it should be more about how they
Rest in
respond.
peace, Marianne.
She's still alive.
I'm just saying.
She's not her
Her campaign.
Yeah.
You heard it here first,
Her
folks.
presidential campaign. Rest in
R.I.P.
peace to the campaign.
It is about what you, because I at the moment don't remember exactly what Bernie and Elizabeth or anybody really say about childcare, but knowing who they are, I can probably guess what they're going to say, and that's what candidates should be more focused on, is not their exact plan, but what do people assume that their plan would be. I think going into childcare, as important as I think that is, and it truly is, it's just one of those things I've heard talked about for I don't know how many campaign cycles, and it's just never become a thing because it's not at the top. Why? Because childcare is an issue that is who's going to make money from that, or who's the people that stand to lose money if we allow parents to stay home longer. So it's another role of money in politics that influence it. And again, if we were to connect those issues, it would do better for that issue. I think that Bernie tied trade and climate. And the more that these issues can be tied together and not like a bunch of different unrelated issues, then we can actually have a strong, like aligned vision of what we want going forward that takes care of all of the issues. God, I should just be freaking running by myself.
Well, that's what
I was thinking that too.
And I am now 35, or
That
36.
you-
I could, but
Yeah.
I wish somebody else would. I
or
wish
at least
Alyssa-
advise them, advise them. Someone advise these candidates and say, okay, these are certain things that you should say or do.
I mean, not that long ago, I had Bernie's ear a little bit more than Elizabeth Warren's, but I was when I was going to DC a lot. But even still, I see these pre-debate questionnaires that the candidates send out, and it's like, yeah, it's nice that you want to know what's important to me, but you should actually be telling me what is the problem with government. We all know there's a problem with government. What is the main problem, the overall solution, and then all the things it's going to fix.
Right.
Yeah.
Whoever can weave that narrative in a compelling, emotional, but also smart, passionate way is going to win.
Well, we are out of time, so thank you to people who stayed up late in the chat, and of course to our panel.
And who agreed with us.
Yeah, well, people agree with me, people agree with me. Nobody really agreed with Scott.
No, I was just there kind of on the side.
Yeah, that's all right.
That's okay.
You'll get your turn next week.
Yeah.
I agreed with Scott.
In the meantime, Chelsea, where can people find you?
On Twitter at Chelsea Galicia.
Tamra.
On Twitter, hey Tamra _
And Scott.
You can find me basically calling out Trump at SMan80.
And you can find me on Twitter and Instagram at KristenDMZ. Now, next week, we'll be back at our regular time, Tuesday at 4 Pacific. That is indeed 7 Eastern. So we will see you all then. Thanks, everybody. Have a good night.
Bye. Our founder, Kevin Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.